For any veteran rideshare driver, one of the most common questions that often pops up is, what is the best vehicle that a new or prospective rideshare driver should purchase? What's the best vehicle to get for a rideshare driver? Going to talk about that today. What up, folks? Once again, it is indeed your boy Tim with another ride sharing video. Now, this came by way of a Lyft forum, saw it online, and the answers are why I'm bringing this video to you. A hell of a lot of other drivers chimed in and gave their opinion. What is the best vehicle to drive? But notice how the question was framed, because it also talks about e-vehicles and hybrids. Decided to buy a new Highlander 2023 or 2024 for Uber and Lyft. Can't decide, hybrid or gas, opinions and thanks. Now, yours truly, I tend to believe that purchasing a brand new vehicle to put the miles that we often put on a vehicle in ride sharing, I'm going to personally say it goes against any advice that I would ever give. But I will tell you why based on the actual metrics. But here is a follow-up from one of the commentators, and it also gives you some insight on why this individual's question has a lot of issues to address. By 2030, all rideshare vehicles must be electric. Think about it. You'll save more with hybrids. Now, the idea that all vehicles must be electric by 2030, we're talking some 6 years or even less than 6 years at this point. That's not necessarily true. There's a few issues that have to be taken in consideration. First of all, where are you driving in? What market are you in? Because I do believe that statement, all ride-sharing vehicles have to be electric by 2030. That's going to depend on your market. Hate to go political, but this certainly plays a huge part. If you are in a liberal area, predominantly a really big city, think Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, that has a more likelihood of actually being true. But if you're in a conservative area, think Birmingham, Jacksonville, Florida, Jacksonville, Mississippi, highly unlikely that in a span of only 6 years, those states that are in more Republican areas are going to force drivers to go electric. That's not likely to happen in 6 years nationwide. So politics plays a part. Furthermore, it also depends on who is in the White House. We know, if you follow politics to any degree, the Biden administration has a totally different opinion on whether we should go into alternative energy vehicles than the Trump administration. Fact is, if Biden is reelected, there is a chance or more of a likelihood that the requirement to have an electric vehicle will spread across the United States. If Trump is reelected, it's likely to be rescinded. More and more areas will be allowed to continue driving fossil fuel vehicles. So politics plays a huge part in what's going to happen as soon as 2030. Keep in mind, whoever gets reelected, they're going to be around damn near almost to that point, 2028. And it's likely they're going to start either strengthening laws requiring us go towards electric vehicles or rolling them back, making it take longer to get to that avenue. Fact is, most of the world is indeed going electric, so it will eventually happen. But whoever you have in office makes a difference on how quickly the United States will get there. So politics certainly plays a part as a rideshare driver. Here's another comment, though. Why are you going to spend 40 to 50K on a vehicle for Uber or Lyft, though? I refer to that comment as a home run. Fact is, if you go out and spend $40,000 or $50,000 to drive for Uber or Lyft, you're going to tear that vehicle apart. Even a modest part-time driver, like yours truly, for instance, driving as a side hustle, I have a day job, 20 to 40,000 miles, a side hustle part-time driver is going to put on the car. 20 to 40,000 miles annually. If you're a full-time driver, it could be over 100,000 miles per year. For any of my veteran drivers, that have driven for Uber or Lyft full time. How many miles do you average in a year? If you're a full-time driver and you had to estimate, how many miles are you putting on your vehicle per year annually as a full-time rideshare driver? I would submit to you it's going to be around 100,000 miles in a vehicle. Now that varies depending on markets. Some markets, every damn thing is close by. Some markets, you got to take longer trips. But still, probably about 100,000 miles. And obviously, if you're paying $40,000, $40,000 to $50,000 for a brand new Highlander in this case, assuming the car doesn't cost more than that, you're putting 100,000 miles on that car in a single year. You're really depreciating the hell out of that car very, very quickly. Now, there's a few things to address. First of all, if you're purchasing a car for $40,000 or $50,000, you are highly concerned with resale value, because we're going to wear a car out in, 6-7 years max if you're putting 100,000 miles per year on a car. I don't know if a Highlander could even get you 500,000 miles. So you're not going to have a car very long, and chances are you're going to take out probably at least a 5-year car note. So if you buy a brand new vehicle for 50 grand and you take a 5-year note out and you come back with 500,000 miles on the fucking odometer in 5 years, you're not going to get anything for that car. Even if you come back with 300,000 on the odometer, that $50,000 Highlander that's only 3 years old is probably about 20% of its original value. So flat out, you should never pay $40,000 or $50,000 to purchase a ride-sharing vehicle. But I'll give you another example. Let's say you do the math, and it looks like, yeah, I can afford the note, and this is actually worth doing. That's how a lot of us got into ride-sharing. When I started driving in 2014, yours truly, I did purchase a vehicle to drive. Here's the issue, something we didn't know when we first began driving that you should know now. And if you're a new prospective driver and you don't know, then that's my purpose of being here. You don't have any control over what Uber and Lyft are going to do tomorrow. So if you go out and do your actual numbers, I do this average of trips per day, I make this much per mile, and I earn an average of this much per day or per week or whatever metric you come up with, whatever formula you do. And it does seem that you can afford to purchase a car at this expense. The problem is you have no control over Uber or Lyft deciding tomorrow to change one of the metrics you used in your formula, such as pay. When I got into ride sharing back in 2014, drivers in my market made $2.20 per mile. So if I had to use those numbers to decide to purchase a vehicle, maybe even purchase a house or a 1-bedroom condo or something, $2.20 a mile is a decent earnings for a full-time driver. So I may think I could go out and, get a furniture account, get a new car, 5-7 years, I could easily pay it off at $2.20 a mile. We now make 75 cents a mile in my market. And that didn't happen overnight. Every year, the wages continue to go down. Uber and Lyft do not warn you of that. That can happen at any given time, such as this upfront pricing that they just came up with recently. Suddenly, you're making less. So if you do your math and you think you can afford a car today, they can change the formula so that tomorrow you suddenly can't afford it anymore. Having said that, it's not worth putting a significant amount of money down for a car, because you cannot depend on Uber and Lyft to continue the same math for 5 straight years. They have never done that. And every time they make an adjustment, it's generally a downward modification in how much you earn. You can't handle that. If you got even a 3-year car note, you can't handle them continuing to reduce your pay year after year. It's just too common as a rideshare driver. There is one market, though, that it might make sense. Not one market, but there is a condition where it might make sense to purchase a brand new vehicle to drive for Uber or Lyft, and I'll cover that at the end of the video. Real quick though, looking in the comment section, most of the commenters were spot on. Another person stated, buying any brand new vehicle for ride sharing is a poor financial decision. Please don't do that. The return on investment is negative. Totally agree with that 100%. And do not buy a brand new car. It will be worthless in a few years at most. And that's what we discussed if you're putting, 40, 50, 100,000 miles per year on a car. So even as a side hustle, it is very, very questionable if you should purchase a new car. I personally believe you should get a beater. Something that you're not going to be concerned as much with in regards to resale value when it's time to get rid of it. You just beat the car up too much. So when does it make sense to purchase a $40,000 or $50,000 vehicle to do ride sharing in? When you got the local government working with you. In the taxi market, there were drivers who could use and convert their own vehicles, get a license, get a medallion or something of that nature, and they could drive as a taxi driver in a host of cities. When I was in Chicago, you could do that. It made sense because the local government was behind drivers. What do I mean? Exactly what I stated earlier. If you do your formula and determine you can afford a vehicle, you don't have to worry about Uber or Lyft changing the numbers to your original formula so that you no longer can afford the vehicle. If the local government is behind you, they've passed a law that requires Uber or Lyft to have a minimum wage, or perhaps they have to now get wage changes approved by city council. Seattle is a city that has done that. In Seattle, it probably makes sense now to purchase a brand new car to do certain types of trips. Maybe Uber XL or Uber Lux, some of these other higher end transports. Maybe even Uber X. I'd have to really look at the numbers, but folks would suggest they're making as much as $1.50 per mile in Seattle. So that certainly makes it potentially worthwhile if you have the legislators guaranteeing that $1.50 per mile is not going to be $1.20 tomorrow, and they have it locked in. So in markets where they have solid legislation on the books, New York is another example. Looks like Minneapolis is coming on board soon. You might be able to get away with it, but until your local market locks something in by law, I would highly speak out against trying to purchase a new vehicle, because the laws require Uber and Lyft to then become a regulated contracting service. Unregulated, Uber and Lyft has demonstrated time in and time again that they don't give a fuck about you, and they're going to continue doing things that are not in your best interest as a driver. In markets where things are regulated by law, the government is essentially forcing them to give a damn about you. So if you're in one of those markets, God bless you. If you're not, continue driving a beater. As always, subscribe to the channel. Feel free to smash that like button. See you in the next video.